interview that speaks structure. I'm sorry, honey, what? Okay, good. Welcome, really, very, very much to conversation. Follow up, as promised, in the program we aired Tuesday with Amber Moore. We have a program with a friend of hers whose name is Johnny Hobbs, and he is a hip-hop artist, and he's also being billed as a member of and and supporter of the Zietgeist movement. He's familiar with that and proud member of that. And he's got a good story to tell. We're going to go into it this week, Johnny. For your information, the programming all week long is with what are called young people.
Okay.
I'm old, you're young, so we're doing all things with young, so bear with me, okay?
Sure.
Anyway, so Johnny, come and talk to the audience a little bit about, let's just start from the beginning, the Johnny Hobbs story, and where you were born and raised, that sort of thing, is a way to wade in.
Sure. I was in 1986. I was born in Detroit, Michigan.
That's where I was born.
No
Did you know that?
kidding.
Yeah, I was
there
born.
you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What part of Detroit?
Southfield.
Southfield. That's where I used to go to Southfield. That's where out there. Yeah, James Cousin Highway.
Okay.
There used to be James Cousin Highway. You go out. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that very well.
And then so I was born there. My mother moved there to help some members of our family kind of start a business.
Yeah.
That kind of didn't get off the ground right away, and so she ended up going back to New York.
Okay.
She's from New York.
Yeah.
And then I spent some time in Harlem.
And
then she sort of realized that she didn't want me growing up in the same environment as a lot of other members of my family.
Where was the family? The family was in Harlem, or was in New York,
family
or
was
was in
spread
Detroit?
out through New York mostly.
In New York,
on my mother's side. So there's
Yeah.
Harlem, there's Bronx.
Yeah, right.
Brooklyn,
Yeah.
Flatbush,
Okay.
and it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it was
Yeah.
not a good time for inner cities, in the
Yeah.
80s, especially with crack.
Right,
dealing,
you are. Yeah.
So she decided to go back to school when I was born.
Oh,
and
wow.
we left Harlem within like 5 years. And then I moved upstate New York.
Where?
Rochester,
Okay.
Rockland County. She went to Rockland Community College. Then she went to Mount Holyoke.
And
then she
Massachusetts.
went in Massachusetts.
Yeah, right.
And then she got her master's and her PhD in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So then we went back to Michigan.
That's where my whole family was in.
Ann Arbor. Okay.
My daddy was in the law class of 1926, and my paternal grandmother was the first woman ever to graduate from the University of Michigan Medical College ever.
Wow.
Back in 1888. She broke the glass ceiling. Isn't that something?
Wow.
Became a doctor. And that women weren't supposed to do that. We were talking with Amore, you know, about the women not having been treated equally all through the period. But she broke the glass ceiling.
She broke it.
And I was in a middle-class family in Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, middle. My dad was a lawyer, and that was a hard time. That was that was grapes of wrath. A lot of people were just really destitute. We had a woman who ended up in our family setting. I had a mother and a father, two older sisters, and she was like a second mother. And she would cook and stuff, but she was like one of the family. And I didn't remember my maternal grandmother very well. I was only 5 when she passed. But she did, and she said, yeah, that's right. She knew her, Lulu. That was her name, Lulu Hudson Channer. That's Hudson Channer.
Okay, there you go.
And Henry Ford used to tinker in their garage when he was about 8 years old before he became the great builder of River Rouge and everything. But anyway, she said, yeah, Lulu Hudson. She was I looked it up the other day, and she was the first woman to graduate from. I'm not sure if it was in the nation, but she broke the glass ceiling. She said, son, I'm here to tell you that Lulu Hudson was a real bitch. You're supposed to laugh. I mean, the point being is this great heroine was a real bitch, you know. And I guess she would have had to have been to make any progress back in those days.
Yeah, you gotta stand up for yourself.
Anyway, that's Detroit, you see.
So that's
Detroit. We got
That's
commonality.
There it
is.
is. There it is. I'm sure we have a lot.
I think
as this progresses, we're gonna
we got
find,
a lot of thoughts about the human condition that fit together too.
Boy, do we.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just intervened with
That's
that, but
fine,
you hit
that's
me with
fine.
the University of Michigan. That's the whole family setting.
Right.
Yeah, but
so
anyway,
my mother, she
Ann Arbor.
broke a series of glass ceilings as well. With
Yeah.
our family, she's the first person to graduate college.
Yeah, and she got a PhD.
And then she got a PhD
in what?
At
In what did she get?
developmental psychology.
Okay, good, yeah, right.
And so she graduated actually with her PhD the same year I graduated from high school.
I see. Okay.
And then we broke
Were
up
you
from
in
there.
Ann Arbor with her then?
Yes.
Yeah, I see. Oh, so you lived in Ann Arbor as
So
well.
most of my
Great
life was in
town.
Ann Arbor.
Great town. Yeah,
It was a great town.
Yeah.
I had best friends from all over the world.
Yeah, right.
They were kind of hard to keep because like I moved around a lot prior to Ann Arbor, just shifting from school to school. My mother trying to make our lives better and better.
Yeah, right.
And then when we moved to Ann Arbor, we moved to on-campus housing.
Yeah,
and so it was like students that had children.
Yeah,
it was a community for them.
Right.
And so it still wasn't the most stable environment. So a lot of, when people would graduate or if they would transfer, they would be moving.
Yeah.
But I had friends from Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
From the Caribbean.
Right.
From Korea.
That's
from Japan.
good.
I mean, and I was introduced to all of these cultures
very
early on.
That's a really good. Yeah, that's a good environment.
It was great. It was a great
environment. Yeah. Right.
And having to move as well, I learned to communicate with all types of people, and I didn't like it at first. It was very unstable. Every couple of years we're picking up, we're going. Or from Ann Arbor, every couple of years my best friend is picking up and going.
Yeah, I know.
But
that can be hard.
It forced me to have to just sort of get to know all kinds of people.
Keep moving,
and keep it moving.
And maybe get towards systems thinking.
And get towards integrating it all together.
Yeah,
right.
And not getting into a rut. Which is easy to do
in this system.
Yeah, in this system it is. Yeah.
So
did you go to university yourself in that? Or?
Not of Michigan. So I actually, keeping along with that trend of moving a lot and meeting new people, I wanted to go to college outside of Michigan. I didn't want to go where my friends are going. All my friends are going to U of M. I applied to U of M. I got in just to, be sure I had somewhere to go.
Yeah, right.
But I ended up going to a place called Ohio Wesleyan University.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, you've heard of
of course. Yeah.
Okay, so small, liberal arts school. I visited a couple of schools. What was great about Ohio Wesleyan was they had a Japanese program. I knew I wanted to learn Japanese.
Really?
And study abroad in Japan.
Wow.
And they had a very strong international studies program. That's what I studied.
Yeah.
And my concentrations were East Asian studies and developing countries.
Uh-huh.
So that was where I ended up going to college.
I'll be damned. I went to one summer at Antioch, was an advanced college. That was a advanced liberal arts college and everything like that. So you followed through and got a degree or no? Or just
I got the degree, studied abroad at Japan. Everything worked out.
And did you ever get a chance to go to Japan?
I did. I studied for a year in Tokyo at Waseda University.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I studied there. Yeah, it was very interesting.
Were you able to get much language under your belt?
At the time I did. I've lost much of it. So I studied, the first time I was introduced to Japanese, pretty hard.
Yeah.
I was in Hawaii in high school.
Right.
And there's a large Japanese community there that go on vacation there. My mom, she got to bring me along. She had a conference there. She was going to a conference.
Right.
And right from that point, I was like, okay, I want to learn Japanese for sure.
That's where you picked it up?
And that's where I started picking it up.
The interest in Japan.
The interest in Japan.
Right.
In high school.
And
so,
right.
And so in college, the first 2 years of college, I took Japanese. And then, so that I started picking up more and more and more.
Do you have a knack for language, do you think?
I think we all have a knack for language.
You do?
I do.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I think we all
okay.
Where was I? So by the time I got to Japan, I had a good sense of it. And then finally immersing myself in the culture. I mean, it was easy to pick up. And as soon as people, they see a foreigner, they don't expect you to speak Japanese.
Absolutely.
So even if you speak just a little bit,
it goes a long way.
Oh, and then they just want to talk to you and where you're from and what are your interests and what are you doing, this and that and this and that.
Yeah.
And so I had a great conversational level of Japanese.
Yeah.
And it's just about all gone now. Just about all gone.
But it was interesting you had that. Did you have your eye fixed on maybe a long-term relationship with the country of Japan and maybe do something academic, or what was your thought about?
Well, it started actually because I was studying business trends of the world, and I knew I wanted to change the world at some point.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of fixated on, do I want to do it through politics or through business? And I was looking at the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, and Japan's economy's expansion there, right? Right before their collapse.
Yeah.
And so that was that helped progress my interest.
What was the collapse? 90 or is it?
It was
90?
Midnight, 97, I believe.
90. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe mid 90s.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that started the spark, and while I was there, I ended up not being interested in business at all, and just directly wanting to help people.
Okay. Good. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and really change the world that way. But as for a long-term relationship,
do you think you were idealistic?
Very.
Yeah, very. Okay, good.
Very.
Good. We need that. We need
okay,
that,
because people, when I say that,
yeah.
people are like, oh, here he goes.
Yeah, right.
So good.
Yeah.
But when I was there, I actually didn't like Tokyo as much as I thought I was a city person. And I lived in Tokyo there.
Mm-hmm.
And Tokyo is, I mean, if you think New York is bad, I mean, Tokyo is like New York times like 10. With
In
density,
what sense?
population density,
Mm-hmm.
and just the lights, and the activity, and the bustle,
Mm-hmm.
and the monotony that you see. And you see what these cities, what these urban centers can really suck out of people's lives.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I became very perceptive to that. And I kind of, I still love you, Japan.
Yeah.
But I saw what industrial capitalism, what it does, what it can do to urban centers, what it can do to the human condition.
That's a bad sign because the world's heading toward urbanization. It seems to me relentlessly. I don't know, but go ahead.
And there's manifestations of it that can work. You know, because at the end of the day, it's just people coming together, and so that can be a good thing. It just has to be done appropriately.
I wonder if it's overdone, but it's Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway,
yeah,
so
go ahead. Yeah.
So I ended up spending, as soon as I started getting more money in Japan, I was teaching English because it's a very expensive
a good thing.
place.
You can do that almost everywhere in the world.
Everybody
you can almost go live and teach
everybody,
English everywhere. Yeah,
you can.
Yeah.
So there was a high demand there, and it was very expensive to live. So I didn't travel at first, but as soon as I started getting money teaching English, I traveled throughout Japan as much as I possibly could.
I understand Kyoto's beautiful.
Kyoto's
I think that's what I understand. I got a friend who's fallen in love with Japan. He loves
Nagano, Kyoto,
yeah.
Hokkaido. So as soon as you get out of Tokyo, as soon as I got out of Tokyo, I loved the rest of Japan.
Really?
So I want to go back to the countryside whenever I can. Tokyo. Not so much. Not so much.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. And so you did that. You got interested in that, and you took a degree. You say at where now again? I'm sorry.
At Ohio Wesleyan University.
Ohio, a master,
bachelor's
of
arts,
degree.
okay. International studies.
And that was, you didn't do a master's in that, right?
No,
you didn't. You did
I
that.
thought I would have.
Yeah.
In being the idealist that I was, I understood at this time that we needed a completely new economic system.
You understood that? Oh, you were thinking systems.
I was quite systems, quite systems. Well, not quite systems thinking as in everything is all connected, everything is integrated.
Yeah.
It was more just I saw this the separateness of the systems, and I saw how capitalism. Where I didn't see it in the bigger picture of us evolving into it and how we can evolve out of it. But I saw the detriment that it caused. Right, and then I saw applications of communism, and I said, okay, well that doesn't seem to be working either. So my plan was to go back to graduate school to study economic anthropology.
Oh wow, that'd be
and I wanted to create a new economic system.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was like around this time exactly that my friend finally talked me into seeing the Zietgeist addendum.
Okay, that would have been when?
This was in 2009.
2009. That's only yesterday.
That's basically. So I graduated in 2000, like spring of 2009.
Yeah, right.
And then we had seen the first Zietgeist in like 2007, like when it came out.
What was the title of that? The Zietgeist?
Just Zeitgeist, the movie. It might not even been the movie at the time.
Yeah, right.
Zeitgeist.
And that was done largely by Peter Joseph.
Yeah, entirely by Peter Joseph.
Yeah, really.
It was a performance piece. Like it wasn't even a movie at first.
Yeah, he threw it up on YouTube
and
just
threw it
as
up
a lark, and it just went off viral.
There it is.
It really did. It got around.
Fire. Yeah.
And then he did addendum and the other.
And then he did addendum. So because like the first movie didn't really, it wasn't very solution oriented. It was just sort of, these are our ridiculous problems. Take this. Let me put this on you. And so, and I found it interesting. But when my friend was like, "Oh, you have to see Zeitgeist addendum now," I was like, "I don't have time for that. I can't look at any more problems. I can't look at any more symptoms of the system.
I got enough problems of my own.
I got enough problems. I need anybody else's problems."
Besides, you're also down as a hip hop artist, so we got to get to that. Yeah.
So
performer,
there's
right?
that. Yes. So finally, I was having a conversation with someone about the absurdity of insurance.
Okay.
And just the concept that you'll pay this corporation or this entity, right, on like a monthly basis, so that when a crisis occurs in your life, they'll help you with that crisis.
Right, like fire insurance, or
like fire insurance, life insurance, car insurance, health insurance, any kind of insurance. Right. But what we're seeing is that you're paying these premiums, and then you're paying more because they're an institution in and of themselves, right?
Yeah,
so they have to remain profitable.
Right.
So on top of what they're going to give back to you, have to pay them a little extra, so that they can run as a business, right? Yeah. And then when that crisis happens, they're going to use all of that money that you gave them to hire some lawyers to try and fight to not give you your money.
Is that the way it works? Is that what
That's what I kept seeing over and over again. I'm seeing insurance. Yeah. You give this insurance, and okay, in case something happens, I'll know for a rainy day my money's here with this institution.
Then they're going to try and welch on it, even if it does happen.
And they want to fight you to give it to you.
Okay, that's interesting in and of itself. Yeah. Okay.
And I was having this conversation. I was pretty distressed that this person was not understanding where I was coming from. I don't know. Probably a lot of people aren't.
No, I can understand. Okay. You see it that way.
And so I was explaining this to him.
Particularly if corruption comes in.
Yeah,
political corruption allows things to happen that shouldn't.
Exactly.
You need oversight and everything.
Yes.
And that process should involve the federal government somewhere rather than all be in the private sector.
Yeah, it has to be.
Because they'll run amok if they can, often, you know.
Just
particularly venture guys will. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
There's no moral code. They have they can't afford to have a moral code.
Right, because somebody else will run away with the pot.
Someone else will take the market. So I expressed this to him. I can't get this point across to this person. What am I going to do? And he said, watch Zietgeist Addendum. He kept telling me now for months now. He's telling me to watch this movie. I was not going to watch it. So he's
Where are you now? You're in New York now?
I'm in Connecticut.
In Connecticut, okay.
So she got her PhD. Yeah. Then we moved to Tennessee, and then we moved to Connecticut.
Yeah, okay.
So I ended up in Connecticut. She's teaching now. She's a professor at the University of Connecticut.
Well, that gives some security anyway. Yeah.
The most that we've had.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's good. Yeah, anyway, so that's
So I'm in Connecticut.
So you saw the addendum.
And I finally saw his addendum.
And what did that say to you?
And it's man, that was it.
Yeah, right.
That was it.
You were hooked, right?
Right. I was hooked.
Happily hooked.
Happily hooked.
Different being happily hooked and not happily hooked.
Than not happily.
Yeah, right.
Hooked because I have to be hooked.
Yeah.
So I immediately threw away the idea of studying economic anthropology. I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my energy behind this. I'm gonna study the ideas behind this.
Okay. So I started studying. There's some anthropology or economic anthropology within the addendum?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. But I didn't want to study it anymore in formal education.
You'd rather study it with the bias. Instead of Mr. Marx or something, I'm going to do this addendum as a way of seeing
addendum
things.
Is my starting point.
Or the Zietgeist movement.
Or the Zeitgeist movement.
And that's Jacques Fresco.
That's Jacques Fresco, right? That started. So we started as an adaptation onto the Venus Project.
Right.
And we started as the activist arm of the Venus Project.
Oh, really? Okay.
Right. And
were you down in Florida with Jacques?
I got to visit him.
Yes, I got to visit
there's
a woman.
Roxanne Meadows.
Roxanne, that's right.
They're all great.
Yeah.
So it was amazing seeing
that goes back in my mind 15, 20 years or so. They made that film. They had a film with a locomotive going, and it was
an older one.
Channeling a lot of what Fuller had done.
Right.
They were and it seems to me that an awful lot of what seems to me to make sensible thinking is very often and consistently and well linked into the legacy of Buckminster Fuller.
He does seem that, right?
Did it seem that way to you?
Absolutely.
The system thinkers usually come to him and have some wrinkle on it, but it's really essentially
So I hadn't heard of him at the time. Right, it was first Jacques, but in studying Jacques and then the influences of Jacques, that's how I began to research Buckminster
Jacques Fresco. Yeah.
And then I immediately saw the similarities. I wonder if they ever met. Do you know if they ever?
I don't know. I don't know if they did or not. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. I never met the Fresco. I never met Jacques.
Never met Jacques. Okay.
I had done a program with Fuller. Way back when.
Yes.
Way back when.
Yeah.
1974. I was onto that way back in the 60s. On the Fuller. Yeah, but anyway, that's the sidebar. So you got hooked on the addendum.
So I got hooked on the addendum.
Right. And maybe you can explain to the people or some of the things that attracted you so much to it, and then we want to talk about the Zeitgeist. And don't forget, we got a clip of you as a hip-hop artist, or
this is a music video, my official music video from May Day, which is May 1st just passed. And yearly it's a celebration of International Workers' Day.
Yeah, sure.
Right? I mean, and then even in ancient times it goes back to celebrate the blossoming.
Yes, isn't it a relief? I'm so glad to see this winter over. I'll tell you, it was terrible hard. Anyway, so addendum, and how did you deal with this newfound sort of direction, if that's the right term? Or what did it mean to you?
It
or inform your behavior or your way of thinking.
was funny you say behavior, because something I knew there was at the time, I didn't know how to articulate it, but something that they talk about a lot in the Venus Project, and that now, being with the Zietgeist movement, as I've expanded my knowledge of, is human behavior versus human nature. Okay. And I saw everywhere that the excuses for why there was so much deprivation and so much violence was just that we were innately aggressive and we were innately violent
and greedy,
right? And I knew that wasn't the case, because I would
right.
I'm seeing people be nice to each other.
All the people I like were really lovable, good people, human beings.
There's
right.
the nonprofit sector, the entire sector in and of itself is sort of an example of how you can be as altruistic as possible in this monetary system.
Right.
So I'm not believing, what they're saying. And addendum kind of was like, there's human behavior and there's human nature. Okay. And really what people think they're seeing as human nature is human behavior that's instigated and perpetuated by a particular environment. And this environment is one that's rooted in scarcity, right? And so we have money as a medium of exchange, right? So in exchange things, I don't have something, you don't have something, we both want what each other have, money. And it became a commodity in and of itself, and it sort of became this very corrupting thing.
Okay, all of that said, but you spelled it out, yeah.
And so, and I'm, you hear the phrase, money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah, that is a phrase.
And that goes around, but people are still, they're not really researching how money came into circulation, how it even comes about, and how it's the root of all evil. We just have this idea that it is. And so the Zeitgeist Addendum it taught me now study money mechanics, study human behavior.
Money mechanics,
just
Federal Reserve Board?
Federal Reserve,
how
they manufacture money out of debt, right? And so there's never enough money in circulation to pay off all the debts, because to even put money into circulation, the banks have to basically charge you for it.
Well, okay, right.
They have to charge you for it, and so you're always going to be in some sort of debt.
Okay, yeah.
It's called fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, and you got into that.
I got into that, I began, and I wasn't really interested in economics.
And that was stressed in the addendum particularly? Or was that what got you there?
That was an addendum. That's
the addendum. That's what got you on.
So it taught me exactly how to study money.
And you saw a pathway for you to follow that was effective in a practical sense in terms of trying to get at a more idealistically, morally oriented world.
Right. I saw it. It could actually be implemented.
That's important. That gives you a lodestar to follow and principle and something. Rather than just drifting along. Yeah. So, okay.
Because I knew I wanted to change the world. I had no idea how.
Yeah.
Right around the same time.
A lot of people are like that, don't you?
There are. Yeah. I saw that especially with Occupy Wall Street. When that started.
You get involved in that?
I was involved in that. Yeah.
You were on the side of the police and everything. You were beating people on the head.
Protesters, lazy protesters. Yeah, we can talk about that too, because I was a part of a very special working group. We were the first working group as a part of Occupy Wall Street that participated with organizations and activist groups outside of Occupy Wall Street.
Are you going to go to the Left Forum this year?
I am. We're going to speak, actually.
Are you on a panel or something?
I'm on a panel.
What's the panel's title?
Beyond Democracy, Capitalism, and Scarcity.
There you go. I love that. I've got a panel. Did you know that? I want you to come. It's on Saturday the 1st at noon. Right?
Okay.
It's called Transcending Material Scarcity.
There it is. There it is.
Well, that to me is the major thing that may be part of this Zeitgeist moment that is never, ever, ever able to be mentioned in polite circles or any other circles because it's assumed to be absolutely ipso facto absurd. It's rather like an analogy I'm using now, I don't know if it makes any sense, is that Galileo particularly, they invented lenses that allowed you to see the universe in a way where they could examine the orbit pathways of Jupiter, and it led him, and Copernicus and so forth, to put forth the fact that this Earth, which had always been, and all the identity factors and the economic systems such as they were, I think there's always been a few people who, using the idea of real politics, would be able to assume their role of political legitimacy in a particular order by having the biggest club, where they could go and hit somebody else on the head and conquer, and then have minions, soldiers that will support them. And then, that's how they establish political legitimacy. It's called real politics, or reality is on that principle. And it was always on the assumption that there wasn't nearly enough.
Too, yeah.
So it was, I think there never was, in an ideal ontologic sense, enough until now.
Well, hunter-gatherer societies, they had
I mean enough in an ultimate ideal, in a sense that isn't political or isn't historical. It's evolutionary. Okay. That when you have an evolutionary process, like we're all African, we're all descended of, they had a thing the other day, it's all coming out of, the science seems to be there, that when first we appeared 200,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago, 10,000 generations, and it was down, they might have been down to the whole of the people that had come out of Homo erectus. We had evolved up Homo erectus, Homo, Australopithecine and everything. And there were as few as maybe 200 to 1,000 people who carried the whole future in the evolution of the Homo sapiens species, up to 10,000 generations where we come now. And we're closing quotes on that. That's what we're closing quotes on now, in my humble opinion. We're transcending through extended consciousness, ability to make the world different through good design, ephemeralization, doing more with less, good design, all of these. We're actually maybe increasing the number of people on a world scale who can be realistically seen to be a have. You know Bakari?
I know
Bakari
Bakari.
Page?
I know Bakari.
He wrote a book now. He would have aired earlier this month, or this week, and he wrote a book called Enough for All Forever.
Right.
Or, we may be actually transcending material scarcity, which has been an ontologic reality until just yesterday. We didn't cross that 50% mark, according to Fuller or Fresca, until about the year 1970. Were you born in 1970? You weren't even born yet. It was before you were born. You were nothing but a gleam in your daddy's eye. But anyway, do you understand what I'm saying? So I think that there's always been scarcity in the technologically augmented capability of providing life support for a growing population. And we now may have, he factored it in to say we may have crossed the 50% mark in an equation that says what percentage of the world population, in terms of capability, don't confuse it with the inherited institutions that were all formulated within a condition of scarcity. If you have that, it's zero sum. For one to win, somebody else has to lose. The whole thing, where the only way to establish legitimacy, it's still operative politically. Whoever's got the biggest club wins. And that kind of, but there's not nearly enough. One thing you have to make certain of is not nearly enough.
Which was the justification point of having these incredibly unequal systems that created inequality.
For 200,000, no. Well, 200. We don't know what. We don't know what it was like. Yeah, 10,000 maybe, because we don't know what very well what it was like in those 190,000 years when we were wandering around in the wilderness.
Paleontologists are learning a lot about.
You should have studied some of that anthropology that you missed.
I still studied a little bit. Yeah, economic anthropology.
Yeah, what it was like. Ashley Montague wrote very well. I don't know if you read Montague.
I haven't read it.
He's really good on the likely way. I think there's a good chance that we were prey for a good deal of the time on the Serengeti Plain to the big cats. They ate us with a lot of regularity because we were so vulnerable.
And fire changed that, and we were scared of the night.
Fire came a long time,
we were scared of the night because the big cats could see, at night. Their eyes were well adjusted.
And they've also got big teeth. They got big teeth, and they can run very fast.
And they can run very fast.
And
they're very strong.
And we have nothing but.
And we're these puny little.
That's probably part of our carried legacy or something that. We were for a very long. I would assume that we were a prey. I took a doctorate in geography. I had the best geographer in the world as my advisor, and he had a theory about the seaside home of early man in let's say in Africa. In the headlands, you could put up you were able to fashion at a very simple level. You could start building, steel barricades. You didn't have steel. You did all the resources were here. As we came out of the cave, all the iron ore, everything was here. We had a liaison with technologically utilizing it, but you could build up a wall against the cats, and then also there was a source of incredible source of the seaside home of early man, or ecological niche, because of the clams. The clams are just an inexhaustible capability along the seasides of the world, and that you could be on the headlands in protection against the cats as an ecological niche for early man. I don't know. His name was Carl